Inspiration. So what is inspiration? Where does it come from? And what use is it? So I'm a composer. I write music, what you might call classical music. And perhaps of all the creative types, it's composers that you most often associate with inspiration. We imagine a composer working away feverishly with fully formed masterpieces springing from their mind, from their subconscious. And here's Arnold Schoenberg, deep in concentration. Here's a sketch of Beethoven's cello sonata. That's clearly a work in progress there. So what do we mean by inspiration? Well, it's literally an intake of breath. In language, it's a sudden, transient phenomenon, a flash of inspiration, an inspired guess. Inspiration strikes, and eureka. We also talk about feeling inspired, about entire works being inspired works, about being inspired by things and by people. So it's clearly something special. It enables us to do something that we cannot ordinarily do. So, where does this mysterious quantity come from? What sets it off? Well, here's a few examples. Reading, talking, walking, seeing, hearing, life-changing events, life-changing people. And also, divine inspiration. This is Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, the creation of Adam, the spark of creation. And the letters there, SDG, are frequently used by both Bach and Handel to sign off their divinely inspired works. It stands for Soli Deo Gloria, to the glory of God alone. Well, speaking of letters, I've heard of one writer who talks of the 3 Bs, that they only are able to think freely and be inspired when they are in the bath, in their boots, or on the bog. Inspiration is often reputed to arrive in our dreams. There's this famous story of Elias Howe, the inventor of the sewing machine. He couldn't figure out how to mechanically pass a thread through cloth. He went to sleep frustrated by this problem. And he dreamed about cannibals preparing to eat him. And as they danced around the cauldron, the fire boiling away, their spears went in an up and down motion. And he also had time to notice that the tips of their spears had a hole through it. And so he woke up, he remembered this, and the problem was solved, and he invented the sewing machine. James Watson, one of the discoverers of DNA, he spoke at his own TED talk about the idea for the double helix structure of DNA coming into him in a dream about a spiral staircase. Well, all of these come from a relaxation of conscious thought. Bathing, dreaming, sleeping. Insights come to us when we give our minds free rein. It's easier said than done, of course. There's no surer way to become tense than to be told, you must relax. Inspiration can even arrive by mistake. My art teacher at school said to me, Benjamin, there's no such thing as a mistake in art. There are only opportunities in disguise. Well, he wasn't the only one. Renoir said, I've spent my life making mistakes. Salvador Dali said, mistakes are almost always of a sacred nature. Well, it's just as true when you're writing music. If you play something back in the wrong key, or faster or much slower, something that was originally boring suddenly becomes new and interesting and leads to further ideas. Sometimes it's good to leave a mistake in. This painting is People Reading Stock Exchange by Norman Rockwell. It's done for a cover of a magazine. Can you spot the mistake? Well, there's a 3-legged man. This man on the left in the red jumper. You can see 2 legs in his grey trousers, but what's he leaning on? And perhaps Norman Rockwell thought this was a joke he could play on the viewer, because this walking stick, a 3rd leg, in the foreground is very prominent. So perhaps it's all just a joke on us. I think you've all seen the illusion now, you can all see it now. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, I'm afraid, so I've spoiled that painting for you forever. I think the key to mastering inspiration is always to be ready to ask, what if? To always maintain curiosity. It's very easy to have a cynical, no, it'll never work, and to dismiss an idea before you've even really thought about it. And if you just allow that first idea to develop, who knows where it might lead? You shouldn't dismiss an idea if you think it's derivative or unoriginal. Here we have Stravinsky on the right, famous composer. He said when writing music, one should not borrow, one should always steal. And we see this in his ballet Pulcinella. Diaghilev, here on the left, gave Stravinsky some music by the older composer Pergolesi and said to him, make me a ballet from this. And Stravinsky initially said, this is boring, no good. He was feeling uninspired. But he spent some time with it. He applied his own playfulness, his own musical language, and he created a masterpiece. Not only that, he also opened up and unlocked the whole series of masterpieces that came after it that we now call Stravinsky's neoclassical period. Inspiration can even come through uninspiration. When you have no ideas, and every idea you come up with you think is rubbish, is worthless, the answer is to write something, anything, down, or type it up on the screen. The act of doing can often unlock the good ideas that lurk beneath the surface. Now, I, like many writers, occasionally suffer from writer's block. Can't think what to do. And a friend of mine, the composer Ian Vine, he told me this great technique for getting past writer's block. He said, sit yourself down with the blank page and an alarm clock. Set it for 15 minutes. And you sit there for 15 minutes and you write something, or you just sit there and look at the blank page for 15 minutes. When the alarm goes off, you get up and you go and do something else for half an hour. Then that half an hour you come back and you do another 15 minutes with the alarm at the end. Then you get up, half an hour, go and have a cup of tea, do something else. 15 minutes, half an hour, 15 minutes, half an hour. Before long, you come to dread that alarm going off at the end of the 15 minutes because you've written something and you want to carry on writing. But if you stick to that regime just for a day, you suddenly find you can write again. It's a great technique. But how exactly does one turn this, the inspiring mountain of the Matterhorn, into this? That's Richard Strauss's Alpine Symphony. Fantastic piece of music, if you don't know it. Well, I think this comes down to what I call the illusion of inspiration. I think it's a myth that great ideas arrive ready-made to a chosen few with only the simple act of writing them down, standing in the way of eternal glory. The spark might arrive at any moment, but it's just that. It's a mere spark, as yet unremarkable. I believe that such sparks are available to everyone. The key is what transforms that spark into a substantial work. It must be kindled, must be nurtured, played with, tested. You must get to know it. Test it. What is it capable of? Where do the limits lie? The limits are very important. When inspiration needs the freedom to develop, it's only when limits and parameters are in place that the idea can begin to become a work. This is a piece of blank manuscript paper. I have lots of these. Stravinsky thought of the blank page as a manifestation of terror. He said it was like looking into the abyss, until he put limits in place. How long? How many words? How many instruments? How many paragraphs? How many movements? How does it finish? What about the bit in between? The problem is broken down into smaller and smaller pieces, until suddenly there's no problem there at all. Here's the Matterhorn again. Now once, a few years ago now, I climbed the Matterhorn, and it was the physically hardest thing I've ever done. Truly, truly exhausting. One hand in front of another, one foot in front of another, on and on and on for hours and hours, cold and exhaustion. And then suddenly, you're there at the top, feeling very tired, but also very inspired. Well, to return to my blank piece of paper, that's what happens next to it. As you start to put the limits in place and you give form to the inspiration, you literally fill in the blanks. By putting limits on the infinite range of possibilities, that infinite range of possibilities suddenly becomes accessible. We can already begin to see here why inspiration is an illusion, as the work itself is constructed to express the inspiration. Well, then comes the hard work. There's no secret magic. Inspiration is just the starting point. What follows is the application of the craft. The builder takes over from the architect. The inspiration is still important. It's the vision, it's the totem that gives the work meaning and purpose. Well, the inspired idea will inevitably change as the work is created. The creative process of refinement, variation, development, the hard work of making a finished piece. This is from T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. The manuscript is full of changes, additions, deletions, complete rewrites. We shouldn't be afraid to scribble out and start again. The full starts are necessary for further ideas to flow. Here's a page from Mahler's piano quartet. The creative process is quite clear there. Step by step, piece by piece, finished work is built up and put together. What I find fascinating about this particular page is that it's from the unfinished second movement of the piano quartet. Look at the amount of doodling going on there. Perhaps Mahler had become disillusioned, uninspired, had become bored of the piece. What we know, however, is that he wrote this while he was still at college. He was 16. He went on to a lifetime of magnificent masterpieces, incredible music that begins like this. Indeed, this fragment has inspired other composers, the Russian composer Schnittke. He attempted to complete this in his own style, and he included it in his own Fifth Symphony. The process of inspired creation is captured here by Gail Turnbull in his poem An Irish Monk on Lindisfarne. Detail is my toil, in chapel verse by verse, in the kitchen loaf by loaf, with my pen word by word. By imitation, illumination, spark upon spark, striking spark. The patience of the bricklayer is assumed in the dream of the architect. When he speaks of illumination, that is inspiration, arriving through imitation, repeated action, sparks, striking sparks, one idea leading to the next. Gradually, the work comes together through a process of inspired toil, the hard, patient graft of building brick by brick and step by step. Well, what can these thoughts about inspiration tell us about the general creative process? What if, and resist. No, it'll never work. Write, always write something down, even if there seems to be nothing worth writing down. Limits, set limits or parameters, and see how the idea relates to those limits. Spark, let the idea spark off new ideas, spark upon spark. And craft, allow the craftsman to turn the idea into a work, while continuing to play, to test and develop. The illusion of inspiration is that the work comes fully formed in a flash. We know that this is not true. A successful creative process allows the spark of inspiration to develop. The hard, patient work is the application of craft to the inspired vision. It's absolutely true that successful work is 5% inspiration and 95% perspiration. Step by step, word by word, note by note, the craftsman turns his idea into a finished work. To be inspired is simply to begin. Thank you.